for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
My name is Jack Prince, your fellow co-host.
Boy, we got a lot to talk about today. We've got some updates to some stories, and then we're going to really go into depth today on the shootings that happened over the past weekend in El Paso and Dayton, and ties to white supremacy and how Trump's stoking everything. We're going to get to all that. Please be patient with us. Before we get started, though, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. And I think I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. I'm going to record a lights out segment. It might be a video one. I'm not really sure yet what I'm going to do, but it's going to be a lights out segment, nothing but hammer time, because there are so many winners this week. You're not going to believe this. But again, that is for patrons only, patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to us anytime you'd like at Spreaker.com. Do a search there for Southpaws. We're also at the iTunes store. Do a search for Southpaws under podcast and take a look for our logo. You'll find us easily. And, of course, you can listen to us on Pacifica stations across the country and around the world, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and, of course, every Monday night at 9 p.m. on Global Community Radio Channel 1. We're on right after Democracy Now! So make sure you listen to us there as well. Again, before we get into things, we have some updates to some stories that we've covered over the last couple of years, some updates that occurred within the last week or so. And the first two have to do with the Larry Nassar scandal and what's happened at Michigan State University. This first story is published by Megan Banta, writing for the Lansing State Journal. The article is dated July 31st. Gross, disgusting, disappointing. Just some of the words survivors, advocates, and others had to describe the terms of former Michigan State University President Luana K. Simon's retirement. Simon stepped down from the presidency hours after a judge sentenced Nassar to 40 to 175 years in prison as part of a plea deal on 7 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct involving more than 156 girls and women over more than 2 decades. She remained a faculty member even as the Michigan Attorney General's office charged her with 4 counts of lying to police about her knowledge of a sexual assault complaint made against Nassar in 2014 when he was still a sports medicine doctor at MSU. And she'll keep many privileges with the university as she retires, with only one benefit hinging on the criminal charges. The terms, including a $2.45 million payout, drew sharp criticism from survivors, allies, and many others. Here are some of the comments from Twitter. Rachel Den Hollander, who was one of the first women to report this and who has spoken about Nassar, spoke at his sentencing and everything else. Here's what she wrote on Twitter. Quote, I get there was a contract, but there are reasons it should not be fulfilled. You could push back on paying an indicted enabler at least half as much as you trampled on the survivors. Maybe take some of the legal energy pouring against Wave 2 survivors and put it here? End of quote. Valerie Von Frank, she's the mother to one of the survivors. She led a project that resulted in 224 teal ribbons tied around trees on Michigan State University's campus in a tribute to the survivors. Those ribbons are now featured in an exhibit at the MSU Museum. Here's what she wrote. Again, this is Valerie Von Frank. Quote, or that money could up the lives of the more than 100 victims that MSU still has not settled with. End of quote. Jacob Den Hollander, Rachel's husband, wrote this on Twitter. Quote, on the same day this report comes out, MSU allows former President Simon, who is currently being prosecuted for lying to police about her knowledge about Nassar, to resign with a $2.4 million payment. Gross. End of quote. John Manley wrote this on Twitter. He represents many of the women and girls that Nassar abused. Quote, this is an absolute outrage. It's time for pitchforks and torches. End of quote. Aaron Carr directed At the Heart of Gold, which highlighted how institutions failed to protect girls and young women from Nassar's abuse. Here's what Aaron Carr wrote. Quote, why on earth is Luana Simon, MSU ex-president, going to get $2.45 million as a severance payout? This is disgusting. Good time to remind everyone that Simon was charged in November 2018 with 4 counts of lying to a peace officer regarding Nassar abuse. End of quote. Angie Pavlidis led the prosecution on the case against Nassar. She wrote this, quote, good question, disappointing answer, end of quote. This is in response to a post by Kyle Sutton, who wrote this, quote, disgusting. Is there a stipulation in the settlement contract where she pays it back if she's convicted? End of quote. Sarah Klein, who's now a lawyer who represents and advocates for sexual abuse victims, is one of Nassar's first victims from the late 1980s. Here's what she wrote, quote, this makes me absolutely crazy. Why do people who cover up child abuse get rewarded with millions? Go and shame, Luana. Your legacy is destroyed, rightfully so. And shame on you as usual, Michigan State University. Thanks for yet another fuck you. Disgusting. End of quote. Wow, that's some strong language there. But I think there might be a little bit more here. Let's see what else. Reclaim MSU is a group that has called for reforms and serious policy changes at MSU in the wake of the Nassar scandal. Quote, regardless of the terms of Simon's contract, the Board of Trustees has a choice to make. They can continue to honor her as a Hanna Distinguished Professor, one of the highest honors available to MSU faculty, or they can revoke that honor in recognition of her profound failure. End of quotes. So, yep, Luana Simon getting a nearly $2.5 million payout from MSU as part of her retirement package. What do you think, Jack?
Well, I hear these CEOs, like the one that was Home Depot, that ran them into the sawdust and then receives huge bonuses.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell you can justify her refusal to address the biggest sexual scandal in college history and turn around and give her $2.5 million, particularly when the students are paying, $180,000, $200,000 for 4 years of college. Mm-hmm. We are doing this as a replay, right? Replay to our attention to this issue months ago.
Yeah, this is something that we're covering. This retirement just came out within the last week.
Right.
So we're just updating everybody on this, and I've got another MSU story.
And I would say before you go to that next story, Darren, that one thing you need to remind people in our previous announcements about MSU's handling of this, pointing out that there was denial, pointing out that the board was totally blind and refusing to hold people accountable, et cetera, that we also pointed out MSU has the most conservative history of any university in the state of Michigan. Today's August the 9th. This is the anniversary day of the bombing of Nagasaki. Bang. Big boom, right? Mm-hmm. Here's a boom coming from the Southpaws. Michigan State has the most conservative history of any university in the state of Michigan. They had CIA involvement proven way back with a president back in the 50s. While U of M was on strike, all of the professors went on strike against the Vietnam War. Michigan State funded a program that supplied weapons to Vietnam. This legacy is not theoretical. We went through it. We don't have time to do it this morning empirically and showed instance after instance where this university is and sides with conservative agenda. So their refusal to address this sexual catastrophe, right, unparalleled in college history, is indicative of conservative thinking. And why wouldn't it be? When your heavy hitters are Sayoc, and we also pointed out Sayoc was the one that appointed the so-called investigator who was a conservative buddy.
Well, we don't have actual proof of this. This is an allegation.
We brought the circumstantial proof out that they shared time at a party just minutes before the announcement. We're not going to retract all those traces. Again, this is a conservative university. The board is a conservative university. The issue at hand, the sexual abuse, there are liberals and students who are saying, hey, what the blank have you been doing? How do you give this president who had a blindfold on this kind of money? And I urge the liberal students down there, and I know some of them. I have a friend that says the students are mad at hell at this financial payout.
Yep.
I say kick them in the goads. Go after MSU and their policy. And while you're at it, put Peter Sayoic's name on a poster.
By the way, the same Peter Sayoc that just has a brand new statue unveiled within the last month or so over at Millennium Park in Grand Rapids.
Pigeons, you looking for a drop site?
Yeah.
Head that way.
No kidding. And then we've got this one here. I've got this from the State News. This is an update dated August 7th. Ex-dean of Michigan State's College of Osteopathic Medicine, William Strampel, was sentenced to 1 year in the Ingham County Jail Wednesday morning. Strampel was found guilty of misconduct in office and 2 counts of willful neglect in relation to his role as ex-MSU Dr. Larry Nassar's boss June 12th. He was found not guilty of second-degree criminal sexual conduct. Strampel was sentenced to 11 months for count 1, 1 year for count 2, and 1 year for count 3. The sentences run concurrently. That, according to Judge Joyce Dragonchuk. What a name there, right?
Wow.
Nicole Eastman, in her victim impact statement, said, quote, I admittedly was disappointed to hear that he was acquitted of second-degree criminal sexual conduct. I believe Dr. Jessica Neeroth, as part of my experience with former Dean William Strampel, mirrors hers. He should have been found guilty on the criminal sexual conduct, and he knows the truth in regards to his inability to keep his hands to himself. He will live with the guilt that he touched more than one female medical student without consent. He violated personal space and betrayed trust in a position of power, and he also disrespected his wife. I think of the victims of both William Strampel and Larry Nassar, and I think of the comments that I have seen from those who have questioned why the term survivor is used. Knowing that not all have survived the pain from this abuse, that some died by suicide secondary to the pain inflicted on them, I feel that the term survivor is quite fitting. I most certainly survived the effects of the abuse that I have experienced, including a near-fatal accident. I was where I was at the time of my accident due to abuse in medicine and abuse of power, end of quote. Leah Jackson read her victim impact statement of Strampel's sentencing. She asked for Dragonchuk to impose the maximum sentence, Jackson saying, quote, he was supposed to protect us, but he chose to betray us, end of quote. During Strampel's trial, witnesses testified that Strampel sexually harassed and assaulted them, made inappropriate comments, and abused his power as dean of the College of Osteopathic Medicine. Judge Dragonchuk said, quote, in this case, you oppressed these women. You didn't have to say any of these things to them, end of quote. Dragonchuk added that Strampel used his power as dean to manipulate and oppress the women who came forward to testify against him, which she believes is more than sexual harassment. So, yeah, good riddance to him for at least a year. Wonder if he's going to get his retirement. You know? It's a question to ask. Simon's got hers. Why not him?
Well, you know, we talk about the state of Michigan being number one in so many areas.
Yeah.
For example, we have the highest auto insurance and worst PFAS sites, et cetera, et cetera. The next time Michigan State, and I do not care on the gridiron of the basketball court who reigns supreme, but I do care that the next time you hear about the Wolverine versus the Spartan, realize that the Spartan is home to the largest collegiate sex scandal in U.S. collegiate history. That's not hyperbole. Nobody can challenge that. Mm-hmm. And we have such amnesia. You know what I mean? In